There's a certain assumption most people make about billionaires on Wall Street. They're flashy, they're everywhere. You see them on TV talking about markets, or walking into courtrooms in tailored suits. But that's not every billionaire on Wall Street. In fact, there's at least one whose story sounds almost like a legend whispered among traders and quant geeks. Someone whose influence is vast, whose firm touches nearly every corner of modern finance, and yet who deliberately avoids public attention. A billionaire who effectively controls a huge chunk of Wall Street's trading, and who walks around like a regular person on the street, blending into the crowd. His name isn't usually on magazine covers. He doesn't host press conferences. He doesn't even have an official title at the company that made him rich. But Wall Street feels his influence almost every day. This is the story of Rob Granieri, the reclusive billionaire behind one of the most powerful and secretive financial institutions in the world, Jane Street Capital. A firm that in many ways flies under the radar even as it dominates markets that most people don't even realize exist. Most people have heard of Wall Street's big names, the CEOs of major banks, the heads of giant asset managers like BlackRock or Vanguard, or even folks like Ken Griffin of Citadel who are publicly known, make political donations, appear on rich lists, and sometimes influence financial policy. But Rob Granieri is the opposite of that image. He's the kind of billionaire the world doesn't notice until you look closely. He doesn't want the attention. He doesn't court it. He doesn't even want his photo plastered on his company's own website. But behind that low-profile exterior lies one of the most influential figures in modern financial markets. Someone whose firm not only trades immense amounts of securities every day, but in the view of many financial insiders, defines the mechanics of global trading itself. Jane Street isn't your typical Wall Street firm with a flashy front office. The company was founded in 1990 by Granieri alongside a group of traders who split off from another trading firm. From the beginning, it was built around a simple, powerful idea. Use advanced mathematics, statistics, and computer algorithms to trade financial instruments in ways that most human traders simply can't match. Yesterday's gut instinct traders were slowly being replaced by machines capable of analyzing millions of data points in milliseconds. Jane Street was one of the firms leading that shift. Over the past decade, Jane Street's reach grew quietly but dramatically, so much so that in some areas of trading it now dwarfs the operations of traditional investment banks. By the early 2020s, the firm was handling a quarter of all U.S.-listed exchange-traded fund, ETF trading, more than 90,000 products across 240 global exchanges, and generating tens of billions in annual trading revenue. Figures that make many headlines in finance circles, but almost no headlines outside them. Imagine that. A single firm, not a household name to most people, quietly handling something like a quarter of ETF trading volume across the US market. ETFs are among the most popular investment vehicles in the world. Trillions of dollars flow through them every year. Jane Street is one of the biggest facilitators of that flow. Their algorithms crunch data, execute trades in fractions of a second, and arbitrage small price inefficiencies that most human traders never see. And that's where Robert Granieri comes in. So who is this man? In most photos of the firm's offices, he's nowhere to be seen. In the company directory, his profile stands out because it lacks a headshot. He doesn't hold a formal CEO title. He rarely gives interviews. Bloomberg and other outlets have described him as secretive and almost intentionally invisible, the kind of billionaire who dresses casually, walks into work without fanfare, and lets the profits speak for themselves. Granieri grew up outside Norristown, Pennsylvania, in a family that ran a banquet hall, hardly the background you'd expect for someone who would one day shape modern finance from behind the scenes. He studied at the University of Pennsylvania and eventually entered the world of trading, where he developed a reputation for brilliance in quantitative thinking. In 1990, along with a few colleagues, he helped start Jane Street Capital, a firm that would one day eclipse many more famous Wall Street institutions. But what truly sets him apart isn't just his wealth. It's the scale at which his influence operates. Jane Street doesn't just make money on some trades, it has become a pillar of global market liquidity and structure. Where previously big banks and traditional brokers dominated the buying and selling of stocks and bonds, firms like Jane Street now perform many of those roles better and faster because of their technology and algorithms. In some areas of markets, they've effectively replaced the old guard. In essence, Granieri and Jane Street don't just participate in the markets, they help power them. On any given day when ETFs shift price, when international bonds trade, when volatility rises or falls, or when traders try to arbitrate tiny price differences, Jane Street's systems are often in the background making it happen. That's trade dominance most people don't see, not headlines about market crashes or corporate takeovers, but the plumbing of the financial world. This is how a billionaire ends up owning half of Wall Street without ever being on television. But Granieri's story isn't just about finance nerds and algorithms. It's also a human story of someone who achieved enormous influence while avoiding the spotlight. Unlike many high-profile hedge fund managers who thrive on publicity, the ones who make speeches at conferences, write books, go on TV, Granieri actively avoided that spotlight for much of his career. He's been described as a libertarian with a quirky personality, someone who once spent time at places like Burning Man, supported counterculture thinking, and even financed a casino in Mississippi where he once greenlit a multi-million-dollar bet. Some say he dresses more like a college student than a billionaire. Others describe him as unkempt, ponytailed, and casual in ways that seem at odds with the enormous sums of money his firm handles. But it's precisely this disinterest in hype that helped him build an empire of trading power. Granieri focused on systems and performance, rather than brand and image. That's not just unusual, it's almost unheard of at his level. But power without visibility also invites scrutiny. In recent years, Jane Street's dominance has caught the attention of regulators, not because the firm sought it, but because when you handle markets that big, people start asking questions. In parts of India, the securities regulator accused the firm's algorithms of manipulating options markets, a charge Jane Street disputes. Whether those claims are valid or not, it highlights a new reality. Someone with enough influence to handle a quarter of ETF volume and tens of thousands of products cannot remain completely separate from global financial politics. Even more surprising, Granieri's own name came into headlines not because of finance, but because of a bizarre legal situation tied to funding that ended up being connected, inadvertently, to an alleged coup plot in South Sudan. That episode, which made press despite his efforts to avoid publicity, reminded the world that a person with influence and money walks into complicated ethical and legal territory in ways that even they might never have expected. These episodes are stark contrasts to the image of the reclusive billionaire and show that even when someone tries to remain out of the limelight, the world sometimes pulls them into it. So let's pause and consider what it means to own half of Wall Street in the modern era. It doesn't literally mean he owns half of all companies or assets. It means that his influence, through Jane Street's trading systems, touches vast swaths of financial activity that most investors and ordinary people don't even notice. Where once Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, or big bank trading desks would be the central actors in markets, firms like Jane Street are now quietly driving activity through quantitative algorithms, high-frequency systems, and global execution platforms. Some analysts suggest Jane Street's revenue rivals or even surpasses those of traditional giants in certain segments, a remarkable achievement for a firm that operates quietly and without much public fanfare. Every time you see news about markets moving, ETFs trading, bonds shifting, currencies reacting, or options pricing exploding in volatility, there's a decent chance Jane Street was somewhere involved in that motion. And behind Jane Street, there's Rob Granieri, the architect who never chased the spotlight, but built a system that became one of Wall Street's invisible pillars. And here's the twist that makes his story so compelling. He doesn't run Jane Street like a traditional CEO. The firm doesn't have a top-down hierarchy the way most corporations do. Instead, it operates more like a partnership, or even a kind of anarchic commune, where only a group of senior partners make decisions, and everyone's compensation ties directly to collective performance. It's almost as if the firm's structure was designed to avoid the cult of personality, to focus purely on numbers, logic, and execution rather than ego. In a world where so much of finance is about branding and personalities, hedge fund stars who parade around with luxurious lifestyles, celebrity investors who write books and host podcasts, the fact that someone like Granieri can build such influence by not doing those things is astonishing. He didn't become famous. He didn't build a brand. He didn't seek headlines. He built an empire of algorithms and capital that works in silence, and in doing so, he became one of the most powerful figures in global finance. If you want more stories about the untold power brokers shaping the world behind the scenes, the ones you never see but whose decisions affect millions, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Your understanding of how power really works in the modern economy might never be the same again.